MashaAllah, he also has his ijazah in ifta. He is a mufti, alhamdulillah. Also, he is an expert and he has masters in many different fields in Islamic finance, alhamdulillah. So, and along with that, he's worked 9 years with SpaceX. He was the former vice president there. MashaAllah, we have an all-rounder tonight. And alhamdulillah, we'd like to benefit from his knowledge. So if we can ask everyone, inshallah, if they can please try to come a little bit closer so we can make more space. If there's any sisters, usually we ask if they want to come down, but if you're comfortable, we can bring the mic to you when it comes time for Q&A, inshallah. So please, I'd like everyone to come close, listen attentively. And with any questions you have, you may note them down, and then we will have Q&A after the session, inshallah. So without further ado, Shaykh, bismillah.
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Assalamu alaikum. So, I have a lot of content and slides and so on. I'm going to try and not cover all of it. It'll become too much. So I'm going to try and highlight some of the topics about zakah. And what I want is some engagement. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I'd like quick answers so we can make sure we've covered some of the important topics. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to try and keep it not too long. Then we can get into Q&A, because the question and answer is where usually it's most interesting. But I'm going to ask you some questions as we go along, okay? So I'm going to skip all the details of the agenda and just kind of maybe quickly cover, what does the word zakah mean? In Arabic, the word zakah, what does it mean? To purify? Any other meanings? To grow. So those are the two meanings of zakah from a language perspective. It's purification that we achieve of our wealth. And Allah says when we give, He actually grows our wealth. So zakat doesn't decrease our wealth, it actually increases our wealth. And then technically speaking, legally speaking, zakat is one of the pillars of Islam. Unfortunately, maybe one of the most ignored pillars. You know, people will pray, they will fast, they will go for hajj, but the zakat somehow people, either they don't put as much attention into it, or they think they know but they don't. A lot of misconceptions about zakah. So hopefully we can clear some of those misconceptions today in not too much time. So what's the difference between zakah, which is mandatory, and sadaqah? We also have sadaqah in the Quran, in the hadith. What's the difference between zakah and sadaqah? What are some of those differences? You have to have a minimum amount, nisab, in order to give zakah. Okay, what else? Sadaqah anyone can give. Okay. There's a prescribed amount. What is the amount? 2.5% on most things. Not 2.5% on everything. So if you're dealing with hidden treasures, livestock, animals, if you have a farm, agriculture, the zakat can be different. But generally speaking, 2.5% of most things. Okay, so there's a prescribed amount, it's mandatory. If you have a minimum amount of money, you have to pay it. What else? There's a time frame. You have to hold something for a minimum period of time. And the last one that I'm looking for is that it can only be given to specific recipients. You can't just give it to anybody and everybody. You can only give it to specific recipients. But anyway, that's just at a high level. Let me ask you this other question. Why should people give zakah? Is fard, somebody said? That's a pretty good reason. Any other reasons? It's beneficial for the economy, because when you give zakah, the money that you had sitting around actually goes and boosts the economy. This is what they teach you in macroeconomics, right? They teach you that when people spend money, it goes towards creating beneficial products and services, which creates jobs, which then boosts the economy. Okay, what else? Boosts the economy, and it's a fard. Fard is a pretty good reason. What else? Okay, I'll go through some. Number one, it's a command of Allah, right? It's fard. Allah said so. Allah said so should be enough for most things. Also, it's a pillar of Islam, along with the 5 pillars. By the way, when did the 5 pillars of Islam get legislated in Islam? When did that happen? When did the 5 pillars come about? When? Mata. Yeah. Isra and Mi'raj, yeah, that's when the prayer came. How about zakah? Nobody knows? Was it during the time of the Prophet ﷺ at least? Yes? Okay. Anyone disagree? I disagree. The 5 pillars have been there very early on. How do we know this? Because Allah says in the Quran, He says in Surah Maryam, He says, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِسْمَاعِيل. He talks about Ismail alayhi salam. What does he say? وَكَانَ يَأْمُرُ أَهْلَهُ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ. He used to command his family to pray and to give zakah. Yeah? Ismail alayhi salam used to give zakah. Isa alayhi salam, when he speaks from the cradle, what does he say? وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ. Right? So he's saying that I'm commanding you to pray and to give zakah. So the pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam were there during the time of Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail alayhi salam, Ishaq alayhi salam. So they have been there for a long time. Anyway, that's a side point. It's a pillar of Islam. It purifies the soul when we give. It helps us purify the soul. It protects our wealth from being impure. Because, sometimes when we're working, maybe we accidentally put too much time on our time card. Maybe there's some problem with our expense reports. Whatever it might be, it will purify that for us. It bridges the gap between the rich and the poor. And it also gentles, it makes our heart soft and warmer towards the poor when we give zakat to them. And then we said it promotes circulation of wealth and benefits the economy. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that. The question was, who pays zakat? So somebody mentioned earlier, nisab, right? Okay, so who has to pay zakah? Let me ask that more generically. A rich man, and the one who has the nisab. Okay, so number one condition, you have Muslim, right? Non-Muslims aren't going to pay zakah. Okay. Number 2, you must own a minimum amount of money, which is called nisab. Number 3, you must have had that money for a minimum period of time, which is 354 days. But anyway, nisab at the time of the Prophet ﷺ was 20 dinars or 200 dirham. If we convert that to today's time, it ends up being $8,000 if you go by the gold standard, or about $700 if you go by the silver standard. So there was dinars and dirhams. Why do we have 2? At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, 20 dinars were equal to 200 dirhams. That was the conversion rate. What happened over time was gold went up more in value than silver did, so now we have 2 nisabs, a gold nisab and a silver nisab. So which one should we go with? Many of the scholars nowadays, there's a difference of opinion. Many of the scholars nowadays recommend we go with the gold nisab, because the idea is to take from the rich and give to the poor. At $700, you're not really very rich. $800, okay, that's now you have some money. So $8,000, you have some money, right? So people who have $8,000, if they have it for 354 days, then you have to give zakah. How about children? Do children have to pay zakah? Here, one person says no. Anyone says yes? Yes, if they have nisab, okay. Looks like there's a difference of opinion in the room, which represents the difference of the opinion that the scholars have, okay? So the Shafi'is, Malikis, and Hanbalis say that the children do have to pay nisab. And only the Hanafis say, they have to pay zakat. And only the Hanafis say the children do not have to pay zakat. Okay, so there's a difference of opinion. The Hanafis argue that acts of worship become obligatory upon you when you reach puberty, whereas the Shafi'is, the Hanbalis, and the Malikis, they say it doesn't really matter. The money that you have is eligible for zakat. So even if you're a young child, if you have $8,000 and you've had it for a year, your guardian should pay zakat on your behalf, your parent or whoever your guardian might be. And there's evidences for that again, and I don't want to get into the whole issue, but there is a difference. Maybe the safer thing to do is to pay zakat for the children as well. How about husband and wife? Does the wife have to pay zakah? Every person has to pay their own zakat. Now, if the husband pays on her behalf, that's up to him, but she has to pay her own zakat, okay? I'm going to skip some of these technical charts and get into zakat calculation, because I want to get to the question and answer sooner than later. And maybe we can come back to the graphs. But, okay, so somebody said zakat was 2.5%, yeah? I think you answered 2.5%. So let's say in 2024, actually no, that's a bad idea. 2023, so 1 year has passed, okay? In 2023, I made $100,000. How much zakah am I going to pay? It depends on what I saved. Okay, so you guys are smart. Usually when I ask this question, somebody says $2,500. Zakat is not on income, right? Zakat is on savings. We said you have to have a certain amount of money that you need to have for 354 days. Okay, I made $100,000 in 2023. Of that, I saved $10,000. I saved $10,000 in 2023. How much zakat do I pay? Sorry? 1960? $2,000? 250? There's all kinds of answers. Okay, so the first point was zakat is not paid on income. The second point I want to make is zakat is not just paid on what I saved in 2023. 2023 is come and gone. So maybe in 2023, if that's all I had saved and I looked at my bank account, all I had was $10,000, yes, the zakat would be $250. But I also saved money in 2024. Nobody asked me about that. Let's say I saved another $10,000 in 2024. Okay, so I saved $10,000 let's say at the beginning of 2023 I had zero, okay? Zero. In 2023 I end up saving $10,000. In 2024 I save another $10,000. So how much money do I have January 1st, 2025? 20,000, yeah? 10,000 I saved from 2023, 10,000 I saved from 2024. How much zakat do I have to pay? 500? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do I pay for zakat right now if it's my zakat due date? I have 20,000 in the bank right now. 500, yeah? So yeah, so yeah, 23 and 24. So, yeah, so at the end of the day, what we care about is when is the first time you ever pay zakat in your life, okay? In your life, the very first time, we said the nisab was 88,000, right? It was $8,040. I think I looked that up yesterday on goldprice.org. So 8,000, let's just call it $8,000. The very first time in my life, I find that I have $8,000 worth of assets, right? From that point, I write that down. Oh, that was, which date is Ramadan, is zakat due on? Which month? Ramadan? No. There's no specification. Zakat is not due in Ramadan. Zakat is due when I reach $8,000 in savings. I write down, I say, oh, it was the 3rd of Muharram. I reached $8,000 in savings. Then, when the next 3rd of Muharram comes, I look, oh, now I have 15,000 in savings. I pay zakat on the 15,000, okay? The next Muharram comes. Now I happen to have 20,000 in savings. I pay zakat on the 20,000. Then the next Muharram comes. I have 15,000 in savings. I used up too much money. I pay on the 15,000, okay? So every year, I'm just paying on what I saved up. All the savings that I have. I look at my bank balance, I pay on that. But let's make it more complicated because it's not just the bank account, right? So let's talk about what we don't pay zakat on, what we do pay zakat on. So what we don't pay zakat on, out of the mercy of Allah, Allah is very merciful. And the idea of nisab, the word nisab means something that's elevated. So it's the excess, it's those things that are higher or elevated above what we need in life. So Allah only institutes zakat on the extra money that we have. Not on the basics that we need, but the extra money that we have. And even then, He gives us 1 year. Why? So that in 1 year, I can invest it, I can earn returns on it, I can trade with it. If I'm a farmer, I can grow crops with it. There might be different seasons. Maybe my business is seasonal. I sell something, in Ramadan, or I sell something in the winter. And so Allah gives a year for us to invest that money so we can grow that money, and then we pay 2.5% of that, okay? So there's a number of things that you don't pay zakat on, starting with items for personal use. your house that you live in, your furniture that you use every day, your cars that you drive, even if it's a Tesla Model S Plaid, even if it's a Ferrari, it doesn't matter. You don't pay zakat on that. Your clothing, any of that stuff. Also, there is no zakat on jewelry that you wear. Jewelry that you wear, okay? However, how about gold jewelry? What happens with gold jewelry? What do you guys think? So gold jewelry, there has a difference of opinion, okay? The gold jewelry, the Hanafis say you have to pay zakat on gold jewelry, even if you wear it. On the gold part of it, you have to give zakat. And the Shafi'is, Malikis, and the Hanbalis, or most of the Hanbalis actually have a difference of opinion within themselves, but most of them say you don't have to pay on the gold jewelry, okay? My personal opinion, I don't believe that you have to pay zakat on the gold in your jewelry. My personal opinion. You can choose your opinion. If you follow madhab, you can follow that. Again, the Hanafis say you have to pay it. Others say you do not have to pay it because it's something you're using. It's for personal use. Okay? So what is zakatable then? What you do pay zakat on is the extra that we have. Any cash that we have. Whether that cash is in my wallet, whether it's in a bank account, whether it's in a checking account, savings account, whether I'm using it, whether I'm not using it, whether I'm saving it for Hajj, whether I'm saving it for marriage, it doesn't matter. If there's cash, that cash is going to have zakat on it. Gold and silver, if I have coins or bullion or bars or any type of gold and silver that's not for wearing purposes, that I'm keeping for, to wear myself, of course not men but women, that will have zakat on it. Cryptocurrency is just currency. So Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, doesn't matter. That will also have zakat on it. Okay? How about money that you've loaned to somebody else? Okay, money you've loaned to somebody else, it's your money, you will pay zakat on it. Money that you've borrowed from someone, you don't pay zakat on it. Okay, the other thing, and we're going to get into this in more detail, so I'll come back to stocks in more detail, inshallah, but stocks of any kind, whether you're buying individual stocks, you're buying mutual funds, you're buying ETFs, exchange-traded funds, whether you're doing an employee stock purchase plan, restricted stock unit, any vested stock that you have, any stock that you have is going to have zakat on it. We'll get into how to calculate that later, inshallah, but stocks will have zakat. Secondly, and this is the question that comes up maybe most frequently, retirement accounts. 401k, Roth 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, Simple, SEP, Solo 401k, Solo Roth 401k, all of these different 403b. So many different retirement plans. Do they have zakat on them? And the answer is yes, they do. Pensions do not have zakat. Pension does not have zakat, but a retirement plan does have zakat. Why? Because this is a money that we voluntarily put into an account that we open under our name. It belongs to us. We are the sole owner of it. We decide how to invest that money. We choose from the investment selections that are available. We can withdraw that money at any time. Sometimes we can withdraw that money without penalty, like if we have a medical expense, or if we become disabled, or we have to pay tuition, or even when buying a house for the first time. We can take loans against that account. And sometimes if there's no good reason we want to pull the money out, there is a penalty. Yes, there's a penalty, but ultimately this is our money in our account that we're growing, and ultimately we will pull it back out. Now, retirement accounts, again, I'll come back to this because usually what people have in 401k is stocks. So we'll come back to zakat on stocks in just a few minutes, inshallah. The other thing you have to pay zakat on is education and health savings accounts, 529s, ESAs, HSAs, things like that. So anything that has cash sitting there or some sort of an investment, those are things that we pay zakat on. Assets that we're holding for investment, those you have to pay zakat on. So if I wear a Rolex, I don't pay zakat on it because I'm wearing it. But if I bought it just for investing purposes, I will pay zakat on it. If I have an art collection that I put on my walls and I decorate my house with it, I don't have to pay zakat on it. But if I bought it for investment purposes, because I believe the value of those paintings are going to go up, then I have to pay zakat on it. So anything we're buying for investment purposes, we have to pay zakat on. What if I'm buying something for both? Like I like wearing a Rolex And I also think the value will go up. Do I pay zakat or do I not pay zakat? Okay. So what the scholars say is you have to, you know in your heart, in your mind, which intention is the bigger intention. Is most of your intention about investing, are you always like going to the website, looking up Rolex prices from a few years ago, trying to see what's going on? Or are you more concerned with, oh, this looks really nice, forget the price. I'll sell it someday, but I'm not so worried about that. So you have to think, you have to figure out. Allah knows, so you can't cheat Allah. You can't fool him, but you have to try and figure out, are you buying it for yourself? You like art on the wall, or you really care about the price change, okay? So that's something we have to figure out based on our intention. I'll come back to real estate, but art, collectibles, jewelry, all of these things fall into that category. Now, if you have a business, the way zakat works on a business is similar to how we pay zakat personally. So if we're using something, like I have a building, let's say, and in that building I have a ice cream shop, and I run the ice cream shop. Well, I don't pay zakat on the building, on the value of the building, because I'm using it for my business purposes, just like I'm wearing my clothes for personal purposes. If I have a freezer where I keep the ice cream, I don't pay zakat on the value of the freezer. I have a cash register where I take receipts for the ice creams, I don't have to pay zakat on that. But I will pay zakat on the actual ice cream that I have in the freezer, because it's inventory. So what do you pay on? You pay on the cash that's in the cash register or in the bank account. Accounts receivable, because accounts receivable is just money that people owe you. So you're going to collect that money, so you pay zakat on that. And then inventory, because inventory is basically something that you're looking to sell. So you're going to get some money out of it. So you have to pay zakat on the inventory. So the way that real estate works, now that I've talked about business, I can talk about real estate. There's multiple ways to look at real estate. If I'm living in a house, because it's my house, I don't have to pay zakat on it, because it's in use, okay? If I am renting a house, then in the ice cream shop, I have an ice cream making machine. On the ice cream making machine, I don't pay zakat because it's making ice cream for me. So similarly, my rental house is there to make rental income for me. And so that rental house, I don't have to pay zakat on the house, okay? I don't have to pay zakat on a rental house. Instead, what happens is the rent comes from the house, it goes into my bank account. So when I pay my zakat from my bank account, it's already taken care of. Whatever savings stayed from that, I will end up paying zakat on that. If my business is to flip houses, I buy a house and I sell a house, I buy the house, I develop it, I construct it, I sell it, now my intention is I'm treating that house like inventory. So I will pay full 2.5% zakat on that house because I'm a house flipper and it's part of my inventory. Zakat on agriculture, livestock, hidden treasure, like I said, this is very different. The calculation is very different. It's not just 2.5%, okay? So things that can be subtracted from our zakat. So if I add up my bank account, it adds up to $20,000, and then I add to that some gold and stocks and this and that. What can I subtract from that amount before I calculate Nisan? Things that have become due. So if I have rent due coming up in the next 30 days, I have a utility bill, electricity, water, garbage, whatever the bill might be, credit card bills that might be due, taxes that are due in the next 30 days, maybe property taxes due in the next 30 days or income taxes due, any mortgage payments that might be due in the next 30 days, and any student loans. So anything that's due in the next 30 days, I will subtract from my zakat. But I don't subtract and say, look, I took $1 million Islamic mortgage on my house, I don't subtract $1 million because that's not become due. I don't have to pay that for the next few years. The only amount that might have become due is $5,000. So I subtract the $5,000, not the $1 million. Sorry? Personal loan? The personal loan, if you've taken a loan from somebody, you don't pay zakat on it, they have to pay zakat on it. Okay? Because it's their money. If you've given someone a loan, then you've taken a loan. Yeah. If you've taken $5,000 loan from somebody, your bank balance is $20,000. You subtract the $5,000, and then if it's due. If it's not due for like a year or 2 years, then no, you don't subtract it. You only subtract it if it's going to be due. Okay. So how do we calculate zakat? We add up everything we said we pay zakat on, all of those things, subtract the things we don't pay zakat on, and then we see if it adds up to $8,000. And if it does, we take the whole amount, we multiply by 2.5%, and we pay zakat on that. Okay? But I said I would come back to stocks and 401k. So this is something I want to talk about. The scholars have said when it comes to stocks, there's two ways that people think about stocks. Effectively, there's two types of people. Those people who look at stocks as commodities. Like, I buy it, I sell it. I buy this bottle of water, I sell the bottle of water. I buy microphones and I sell microphones. So some people look at stocks like, I buy it, I sell it. If the value goes up this much, I'm just going to sell it, in 2 days, 1 week. When those people are usually called, in technical terminology nowadays, we call them traders, right? Not T-R-A-I-T-O-R, T-R-A-D-E-R. Somebody who trades stock, right? So they buy stock one day, they sell it the next day or next week. They're day traders or short-term investors. Very, very short-term. They think short-term. Price goes up, I sell, price goes like this, I don't do this, I do that. So that's how they think. So because they're looking at stocks like that as commodities, we're going to treat stocks like inventory. It's something I buy and sell, buy and sell. Okay, it's like ice cream. Or it's like that house that I'm flipping. And so they say what you have to do is pay full 2.5% zakat. If I have $100,000 in stocks, I'm going to pay $2,500 on it. I have to pay full 2.5%. Then they say there's other people, when they look at stocks, they think about it like the ice cream shop. And they say, I bought a share of this business. And from that business, I'm making money. And so they look at the stock as a business. Maybe they're concerned about the ROE or the ROA or the PE or the PEG or the EBITDA. And they're looking at all these things. Or maybe they don't even understand that stuff. They just know, like, I like this stock. I want to own it like a business. I want to be a business owner in this stock. And I'm going to hold it for the long term. Okay? So back in the day, in the 1990s, the fatwa was, you're buying stocks for dividends or you're buying stocks for capital gains. And that's how they would look at it. You're either buying it for income or you're buying it for growing the stock value. And in the 1990s and maybe even the early 2000s, that made sense because people thought like that. Then what happened was as we started going through and more people started getting into the stock market, people stopped thinking about dividends and gains. They just started looking at how much money do I make overall. And so they started looking at it as short-term and long-term investments. And some things changed, like dividends started going out of fashion. Dividends are not as much in fashion anymore. People prefer share buybacks. There's many reasons. So there's another opinion, which is something that I follow, Shaykh Bradford, Mufti Faraz Adam, others who are in the finance field. We say, look, both the dividends and the value of the stock are based on profits. So as long as you're holding stocks for a long period of time, 365 days or more, now you're a long-term investor. So you think about the stocks as a business, and therefore you're going to pay like you would pay stocks on a business. And I said stocks for business is going to be cash, accounts receivable, and inventory, not the entire market value of the stock. So if you're paying on cash, accounts receivable, and inventory, well, that's really hard to figure out. Because you have to go and open up the balance sheet of a company and look through the current assets, find these things, and you have to go through liabilities. It's a lot of work. So instead, alhamdulillah, there's a website, zakat.zoya.finance, that you can go to, and you can say, I have 100 shares of Tesla. I have 50 shares of Microsoft. I have 20 shares of Walmart, whatever it might be, and it will do your zakat calculation for you. And you go in there and you tell it, am I a trader where I'm doing short-term investing and I'm buying and selling very regularly? Or am I a long-term investor with the intention to hold the stocks for 365 days? There's a big difference in how much zakat you pay. But Allah knows if you're cheating, right? So the big difference is, if let's say I had $100,000 worth of shares and I'm a day trader buying in, out, I would be paying $2,500 in zakat, right? If instead, let's say I buy the entire S&P 500 in the stock market, that's like buying the top 500 stocks in the stock market, minus all the haram stuff. How do you do that? There's for example, a ticker called SPUS, okay? So it's the entire US stock market minus all the haram stuff. For example, if I buy all of those shares, $100,000 worth, if I bought it with a day trading mentality, I pay $2,500 in zakat, right? If I buy it as a long-term investor, I end up paying $300 in zakat. 2,500 versus 300. Big difference. So if you're looking at your 401k, generally speaking, most people when they're looking at 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, whatever you're looking at, most people, because you're going to take the money out at, 59 and a half, 60, 62, 65, something like that. It's a long-term investment. Therefore, you can take your 401k stocks, go to this website, calculate it, and inshallah, the amount's going to be less than what you thought. It's not going to be $2,500. It'll be maybe like $500 or $300 or $700 or something like that. And this is meeting the intent of the Sharia, because the Sharia wants you to be investing. Again, like I said, zakat is only on the excess money that we have. And so as long as we're investing, we're benefiting the economy, we're creating jobs, we're doing what Allah wants us to do. Because the purpose of mal or wealth in Islam is that we use it. We either use it to buy something, or we use it and we give it to charity, or we maybe give it as a gift, or we're investing it. So as long as we're doing one of those things, we're doing what we're supposed to do as a Muslim. That's what Allah wants. He wants us to put that money to use, not just hoard money. Okay? Any questions on what we pay zakat on, what we don't pay zakat on, or why, or any of this before we get into who is eligible for zakat? How does the math work? So when you go to the 401k, you will have in there a set of funds or a set of individual stocks, right? So each one of those will have a ticker symbol. So you might see, VMAIX or whatever, or something like that, VOO or whatever you might see. So you look at each one of those, you look at how many quantities you have, you go to this website, and you put in, I have 1,000 shares of this, and I have 100 shares of this. And it will tell you the amount by going through, if let's say you buy the S&P 500, for example, it'll pull the balance sheet for all of those 500 companies, calculate how much cash do they have, how much accounts receivable do they have, and how much inventory do they have. It'll calculate the zakat for you, and it will tell you the amount, so you don't have to do it. Because if we had to do it manually, Ya Allah, may Allah help us, it's too hard. Yeah, so the question is, there's another way that the scholars have proposed for paying zakat on 401k. And what they said was, if let's say you have $100,000 in the 401k, then what you do is you calculate, if I pull that money out, I would have to pay some tax on it. Maybe I pay 40% tax, federal plus state. And then I'd have to pay a penalty on it, usually 10%. If it's a non-Roth. Roth, I don't have to pay penalty at all. So if I did that, Roth, I can just pull the contributions out. So if I did that, then maybe on $100,000, it becomes, let's say, $50,000, and then I pay 2.5% of that. Okay, you can do that. You can do that. You'll actually be paying more zakat than the method I'm telling you right now. Because if you're holding it for the long term, pay zakat on it like a business. So you'll actually end up paying less zakat this way. You can enter ETFs in there as well. It tells you the detail. You have two choices. You can go to the website. You can also install the Zoya app on your phone, and you can connect it to your brokerage, and it will automatically do the math for you. So that's a second way to do it. I think there was a question here first. Yeah, so the question is on gold. The value of gold fluctuates. That's correct. So what we mentioned was that everyone has a zakat due date. You have a date when your zakat is due, right? Which the first time it came in your life was 354 days after you had some amount of money. Maybe at that time it wasn't $8,000, maybe it was $5,000 or something like that. But once you've reached that zakat due date, that due date is what matters. So what you do is you sit down, the day of the due date or the day before, the day after, close enough. You don't wait because everything's going to change. On that due date, you take a snapshot. So you say, I have this many shares of this, or they're worth this much, or the balance sheet is this. This is how much gold is worth. This is what nisab is. This is how much I have in the bank account. This is how much I owe in my credit card, so let me pull that out, right? So that zakat due date, take all the values from that day, and that'll make your life easier, inshallah. There's a question over there. Mm. Yep. So the question is that somebody tried using Zoya, and what they found was that the Zoya wasn't doing the exact math, but it was actually applying a percentage value. And so what happens is, if the holdings of a fund are available publicly, which oftentimes they are, and their balance sheets are available, then it will do the exact math and tell you exactly what the zakat is due. Sometimes what happens is there's missing information publicly. So what do? Do you not pay zakat? No, you have to find an answer. Right? In Islam, there's always a solution to every problem. Alhamdulillah. There's always a solution to every problem. Sometimes we may not know what the solution is, but Allah finds the solution. Right? So the solution that the scholars have recommended in this case is that let's take the average value, if we look in the stock market, and let's look at the average value of the cash, the accounts receivable, and the inventory of a company in the stock market. And let's just apply that, because it's the best we can do, Allah. We want to pay zakat, we want to make you happy, we want to follow this pillar of Islam, but we don't have the information. So the best that we can do is use an average and just apply it to that fund. And so Zoya uses a value of, I believe, 30%, because the S&P 500, the US stock market, average is about 30%. In the UK, by the way, they use a different number. They use 25%, because the average of the FTSE, FTSE stock market in the UK is about 25%. So it's not that the UK people just randomly chose a number, we randomly chose a number. We looked at the average of the stock market. Mufti Faraz Adam did the calculation over there. The Zoya team and Shaykh Jubair myself, we did the calculation over here, and that's how we came up with that number. Mustafa? Yeah. They're using 25%, they got that from the UK. Yeah. The question is about a second house. If it's a second house that you use because it's a vacation home and you go there every summer, there's no zakat. If it's a rental home and you're getting money from that, then there's no zakat on the house. The money gets added to your bank account. And if it's a flipping property that you're going to flip, then you do have to pay full zakat on the value of the house. Yeah, you don't. If you have multiple rental properties, you're not paying zakat on any of them. You're only paying on the value of your bank account, which has the income coming in. Yeah. On the rental, you don't immediately pay zakat. It gets added into your bank account. I mean, think of it just like the ice cream machine, right? You don't pay zakat on the money as it comes. You don't pay zakat on the income. You pay zakat on your cash money in the cash register in the bank account. So that's what you pay the zakat on. Once. Correct. Yeah, the question is the first time you paid zakat after you had $8,000 for a year. Then let's say 6 months go by and it stays 8,000, and then I get 2,000 more, so it became 10,000, and then another 6 months went by. That 2,000 didn't experience a whole year. So why are we adding that? Don't we have to wait a year? And so the scholars have agreed that if we went by that method, our lives would become a mess, because we would be tracking like, oh, this $10 came in, but then like I spent it, and then another came in, and then I didn't spend that, and then this came. How would you actually track that? There's no good mechanism. So the only good mechanism with cash is to pay on the balance. And that's pretty much unanimous that everybody agrees upon, is you don't worry about, the first time you worry about a year passing, and then after that, you don't worry about has a year passed or not. So even if I got $10,000 last week that got added to my bank account, and I've been paying zakat for years, I'm just going to pay on that 10,000 even though it only came in a week ago. So you end up paying on the balance. Okay? Is whatever the cash balance is at that point, yeah. And cash is the most expensive zakat, so you really want to try and put your money into stocks and other things and businesses to reduce the zakat. Mm-hmm.
Do you pay zakah from the corporation point of view, or do you only pay because the corporation is a separate entity?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, if you own a corporation and you W-2 your income, how does the zakat work? So on the W-2, there's no zakat, right? Because whatever money came into your bank account, you'll take care of that. But there's no zakat on the W-2 income. The corporation itself, you own some portion of that. And so let's say you owned 50%. What you would do is you would take 50% of the cash of the corporation, 50% of the accounts receivable, and 50% of the inventory, and you pay zakat on that as if it's just yours. That's it, because you own 50% of the corporation. So that's the fundamental idea of zakat on business. Unless it's some companies in the Middle East and Islamic countries, they pay the zakat for you as a part of the corporation. Very rare. So then you don't have to worry about it. But living here, running our own business, we do have to pay zakat on our business. Whether it's an LLC, whether it's a corporation, C Corp, S Corp, doesn't matter. Sole proprietorship, partnership, you pay on your portion. Did you have a question? That's a good question. So I do have some charts here, right? So this person, let's just say, like, we're looking at this chart, and at the beginning of, like, at the end of February, they haven't reached 8,000 yet. Are they paying zakat or not? This is an easy question. They're not, right? They never reach nisab. This orange line is nisab, which is $8,000. This person never pays zakat. How about this person? When do they have to pay zakat? Not for a year. So they're going to pay zakat 1 year from now, right? This date, Ramadan 1, is the one that's coming up March 1st, right? Inshallah. So they don't pay, actually, they hit nisab before that. So it looks like it's a couple of months before Ramadan, right? So next year, a couple of months before Ramadan, if they continue to be above the orange line, they'll pay zakat, right? Everyone with me? So they don't have zakat due this year, right? Okay. Now we're going to get, this should be easy too. So this person reached nisab last year Ramadan. Do they pay zakat this year? Yeah? No disagreement, right? Anyone disagrees, please speak up. Okay, this person, they were above nisab. They used to pay zakat. Let's say they've been paying zakat for years and years. But then what happened was, in the last year, they somehow hit rock bottom. They lost all their money. And then they built up from there again. Now they're above nisab again. Do they pay zakat or not? Yes, no. Yeah, they don't pay zakat until this point has another year has passed from this point, okay? Because they went to zero. When they went to zero, consensus of scholars, doesn't matter what madhab you follow, whatever it is, you don't pay zakat until a year has passed, you coming above nisab, okay? Everyone good so far? Now the hardest example. You reach nisab, you've been paying zakat, or let's say it doesn't even matter. You reach nisab, then you go below nisab. Then you come above nisab, you go below nisab. At the end, you are at nisab. Do you pay zakat or do you not pay zakat? Anyone say yes? No one's Hanafi here, huh? So the Shafi'is, Malikis, Hanbalis say you don't have to pay zakat because you reset. And so starting here, you wait 1 year, okay? That's what they say. The Hanafis say no. You started at nisab, you ended at nisab. We don't care what happened in the middle, except if it went to zero. If it didn't go to zero, even if it went down to $1 and it comes back up, you're still paying zakat. Okay? It's very strict in the Hanafi madhab. As long as there's nisab. Yeah, as long as there's nisab. Yeah? But they don't care what happens in the middle. Did that answer your question, Munawa? Okay.
You can see a variety of questions coming up, but is there any service that we can pay CPA zakat, CPA, who can calculate our?
That's a really good question. Is there a service we can pay, like zakat CPA, who can calculate the zakat for us? That's a really good idea. Because we're most of us are okay with using TurboTax or hiring an accountant and paying them a few $100s to calculate the tax for us. So we should be even more concerned about the zakat. Yeah, I don't know of such a service. Yeah. Yeah. So a few people. Yeah, that's not. It's any entrepreneurs in the audience. It's. Yeah, it's very hard. You're right. It's a good point. It's a good point. I think we should have a zakat accounting service. I think some people may not appreciate it. Yeah. 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 The question is there any validity to the opinion that you don't have to pay zakat on 401k or IRA? So the thing is, the scholars have obviously spent a lot of time deliberating, researching, investigating on this issue. And there's two major fatwa councils in North America. One of them is Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA, and the second one is the Fiqh Council of North America, FCNA. I've participated in AMJA conferences, and I'm a member of the Fiqh Council of North America. And both of those have ruled that the 401k you have to pay zakat. So as far as all the scholars that I've talked to, the vast majority of the scholars, like 95%, have said that you do have to pay zakat on the 401k. There's at least one person I know who says you don't have to. Okay, there's one person who says you don't have to. And his argument is that the money you don't have full access. It's called you don't have you don't have full milkiya. It's not milkiya tamma. It's not complete access. That's the argument that they use. I respect that person. He's my friend, so I'm not going to speak and say that there's no basis for it. But I'll just say I completely disagree with that. And so and it's not just me. I'm saying the fiqh councils. There's committees of 10 people, 15 people who are working on this. And after going through all the research, the two major bodies have ruled there is zakat on 401k. So I think the safer opinion is to go with the 95% in this case. Yeah, because it's your money, it's your account, it's in your name. I mean, you put the money in there. Sometimes what happens and what does make sense is sometimes people have put so much money in there, it's hard for them to pay zakat. They don't have enough cash outside the 401k. So sometimes that can be difficult because maybe we didn't plan so well. Maybe we didn't think about zakat. Or maybe sometimes we plan, but Allah plans. And so sometimes maybe the amount might have gone down somewhere, or we might have lost some money outside of it. So there are cases where people may not have the money to pay zakat. But that's always the case. Maybe we have, maybe we don't have, maybe we owe some zakat from the past. We should pay zakat as quickly as possible. But if not, it's a debt we owe to Allah, and we should just pay it when we get the money. So if we owe zakat and we aren't able to pay it, we pay it when we can. Let's just quickly cover a couple more topics, and then we'll come back. Just, I don't want to go through this in great detail because usually I go through it in a lot of detail. But I'll just mention that zakat only goes to 8 categories. And so we should know that zakat can't just be given to any random school or masjid or anything like that. It needs to go to the needy or the poor or the people who are appointed for collecting zakat, which we don't have anymore. And then those who, anyway, I'm not going to go through all of these, but zakat goes to specific categories. If you're not sure about the categories, ask a scholar. And just because there's a lot of organizations, a lot of non-profits, everyone wants to say, I'm zakat eligible. Just because someone says they're zakat eligible doesn't mean they're zakat eligible. So again, ask a scholar. Don't trust the CEO of a non-profit. Ask a scholar about it. Ask them about it, okay? The other point I wanted to make really quick was prioritization. So some scholars say this is mandatory, this is wajib, and some scholars say it's highly recommended that we give zakat to those who are close to us, who are qareeb to us. Qareeb meaning what? It could be family. So by the way, can a man give zakat to his kids? No, because we're responsible for our kids. Can a man give zakat to his wife? No, because you're responsible for your wife. Can you give zakat to your parents? No. Can you give zakat to your grandparents? No. Your grandparents are your parents' parents, okay? So the way in Islam, when we say parents, by default we mean parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, all of that. If you say children, it includes grandchildren all the way down, all the way up, all the way down. But you can give zakat to, for example, cousins and nieces and uncles and anyone else, pretty much. Also, can the wife give zakat to the husband? No, yes. I hear no and yes. So the Hanafis say the wife cannot give zakat to the husband because he's just going to take the money and spend it on her. So it's interesting logic, right? It makes sense. So the Hanafis say no. The others say you can. So there's difference of opinion. We can figure out what to do in that scenario. Can you give zakat to your daughter? When she's married. Can you give zakat to your daughter? No, because whether she's married or not, you still cannot give zakat to your daughter. You can give her gifts, but you cannot give her zakat. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. If he's going to be spending it on her, then the Hanafis would argue no. Yeah. If he's going to be spending it on her and that's the intention, then the Hanafis would argue no. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. So, yeah, I leave it up to you. So, family, but we should take care of family first. Number two, we should take care of those in our local area. So, people in our masjid, people in our community, our neighbors. In Islam, like the neighbors to the right of you, to the left of you, front of you, diagonal. If we don't take care of our community, no one else will. We might send money to Syria. We might send money to Palestine. Palestine's not going to send money to the US. So our community has a right over us. Our family has a right over us. We should give them preference, and then we can give to other causes as well. Family first. Yeah, family first. If your family is deserving of zakat, you give them zakat. Then you take care of your community, and then you take care of other causes. Okay? Even if family's overseas. Because again, your family has a right over you in a way that no one else does. And then the people who live closer to you have a right over you after that, right? So family comes first. We look at relationships, and then we look at geography, and that's how we kind of look at it. Here, the question is, you don't know who needs the money here. And so we work with organizations. So there's Uplift. They figure out who needs the zakat. There's ICNA Relief. They figure out who needs the zakat, right? So there's organizations that will take your money, and they will give it to zakat. And one of the benefits of working with the organizations is when you donate money to zakat, you get a tax deduction. So if you give it to the organization, you also get a tax benefit. And if you give stocks, by the way, then you get to wipe out your capital gains. That's another value for those that are doing that. Siblings are eligible for zakat. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, father-in-law, mother-in-law. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Because they don't. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Zakat is, unless you're dealing with agriculture, you're harvesting crops, zakat has nothing to do with income. It never did. It never did. The Prophet ﷺ made it very clear. Zakat is on your assets. It's what you own. There's this clear, completely clear from Quran and Hadith. There's no difference of opinion about that. So it doesn't matter what your income is. If you have zero income for 50 years, you could still have zakat due on you. Because zakat is only on the assets, it has nothing to do with income. Again, it's different when we're talking about agriculture. So agriculture is different. Somebody once asked me so many questions about date farming. Like, I harvest the dates, then I do this, then I sell the dates, then I do this. It's like, oh my God, it was very complicated. But for the average person, we're not farmers, so zakat is going to be on assets. And you will find no difference on that.
Another question I got is that, let's say a wife whose husband recently passed away,
Yeah,
and she received lump sum money from the life insurance.
yeah.
I mean, it's a income for her, but let's say it's not 365 days.
Yeah.
Is there still, because it's a big amount, did she calculate whatever month she received from, let's say 6 months, or she still have to pay for the full amount?
The question is, there's a woman whose husband passed away and she received a very large amount in life insurance. Does she wait for a year or does she have to pay immediately? There's a difference of opinion on that. I tell you the difference of opinion because so that you know. I'm not trying to confuse you. If you want me to choose an opinion, I'll give you the opinion. But I want you to know that the scholars have deliberated on this issue. So the Hanafis have said that she has to pay, as long as the zakat due date comes, she will pay. You don't have to wait 354 days. You will pay immediately on whenever her zakat due date comes. The others, the other three have said, actually, this inheritance, it's sort of like inheritance. This type of money that you received, you wait 354 days. Okay, so there's a difference. But ultimately, like either path you take, like Allah, the differences sometimes that we find in our deen are a mercy from Allah. So if we, maybe we take one over the other, it's okay. Like these aren't the major issues. The major issues, what I try to explain, all of the major things that we have in Islam, what are the most important things in Islam, by the way? What are the most important things? Nobody knows? 5 pillars, okay? 5 pillars. Salah, zakah. The fact that you have to pray 5 times a day. Is there any difference of opinion on that? No. The fact that you have to fast Ramadan 30 days. Any difference of opinion? Okay. The fact that we need to have sabr. Any difference of opinion? Did the madhabs differ? One says you have to have sabr, one says you don't have to have sabr. No. Shukr, no difference of opinion. Tawakkul in Allah, do we have to have tawakkul? We have to have tawakkul. There's no difference. Now, do I go like this with my hands or not when I go into ruku'? There's difference. Why? Because it's less important. The most important things, no one can disagree with you. You need to have khushu' in your salah. You need to have khushu' in your salah, right? So anything that you're going to find that is a fundamental, foundational, most important thing in our deen, there will never be a difference. Allah made it clear, crystal clear. Anything we need to get to Jannah, Allah will not leave us with some confusion. There's no confusion. Islam is clear, right? There's no confusion at all. So anything that's fundamental and important that we have to do in order to get to Jannah, Allah will make clear for us. Then we find sometimes differences. Why are differences? It's not like Allah tried to teach us something and then we went like this. No. Allah by design put some differences, allowed us to have some differences. Because sometimes one thing maybe appeals to us more than another thing. Maybe we follow a madhab, we prefer this over another one. Maybe we're born this way. Whatever it might be for whatever reason. That's why we find differences. So there's a difference. Do you pay right away or do you wait 1 year? There's a difference of opinion when it comes to that type of situation.
Okay, I have a scenario-based question that I think will be more clear. So let's say a few years ago, a brother comes to me and he says, I'm in desperate need of money. He has some cash and I need like X amount of dollars. Let's say he says $50,000. And he says he's going to give me back in 6 months. Now and Allah forgive me if I'm using the wrong example. I saved that just an example. Say this for people who understand.
the question is, you gave someone a loan, and then there's a condition that says if you don't return it in X amount of time, you will have to pay for inflation. That part is haram. Asking for additional percentage, even if it's to beat inflation, is haram. When you loan someone money, a qard in Islam, it falls under the chapter Babu Sadaqah, the chapter of charity. So by loaning someone money, you're performing an act of charity. It's not an investment. It's not an investment. Allah says, actually what Allah calls it is it's an investment with Allah. So what happens is when you give in charity in this dunya, Allah returns it to you with interest in the akhirah. He multiplies it, multiplies it, multiplies it. He says 700 times or even more than that. So when we give someone charity, we cannot expect from them any compensation in return for that. That's how Babu Sadaqah works. That's how charity works. So what do we get? I mean, so why would we loan money then? If we can't even, like, we're going to lose money to inflation, right? Why would we loan money then? Because there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he says, if you give X amount of money as charity, you're going to get the reward for that charity. But if you give X amount of money as a loan because you're helping your fellow brother or sister out, you will still get reward as if you gave half that amount in charity. You see that? All you did was give a loan. Maybe you lost 3, 4, 5% on it. But what did you get in return? Allah returned to you 50% of the value as ajr on the Day of Judgment. And we're going to show up on the Day of Judgment for any loan that we give or any money that we've given in charity, and we'll wish we had given more, right? So for us to ask for compensation in return, that is impermissible. By the way, if you have any haram wealth, there's no zakah on it. So because if it's impure to begin with, we cannot be trying to purify it. Impure wealth, if the entire amount is impurifiable, right? If it's impure, we cannot purify it. What do we have to do? We have to give the entire amount away. So if you have a 3% return coming back on a loan, that entire 3% has to be given away, and it doesn't count as zakah. It just counts as you're trying to purify something you should not have taken. Yeah. Okay, yeah, yep. Okay, so the question is, you don't stipulate a condition. You give someone a loan as an act of sadaqah. You do it as babu sadaqah. You give someone a loan, and you don't stipulate any conditions. You don't even hint. You don't say, hey, pay me extra. Hey, make up for inflation. Nothing. You're just doing this purely for the sake of Allah. But what that person who borrowed money from you, what they did, is they did what Prophet ﷺ did. You know what the Prophet ﷺ would always do when he took a loan? He would always return it with extra. He would always say, you know what, this person was kind enough to loan me money. Let me see if I can return extra. Not as a condition. You can't put that in the contract. You put it in the contract, that's haram, right? It's riba. You can't even hint, you can't talk about it, nothing. But if somebody wants to follow the prophetic example, right, then what we should do when we borrow money from somebody is we should return it with extra. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. So the question becomes, what do you do with zakat on the extra? You just look at it on your zakat due date. If that extra is in your bank account, you're paying on it. If that extra is gone, then it's gone. It's a very simple answer, but it's a very noble act that when you lend money, you don't charge anything on it, and when you borrow money, you always try and give extra. This is the sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ. This is the role model that we had and the example that he set for us. Yeah, the question is an interesting one, which is that can you deduct the taxes that you will have to pay on unrealized gain? So, majority of scholars have said no. The reason they've said no is a few things. Number one, they say you don't actually know if you're going to end up paying that tax. Number two, they say it hasn't become due. So the majority of scholars say no. I think if I'm a little more lenient on it, I would say if you're confident you're going to end up paying it, then I think it's okay. Yeah. You loaned somebody money and your zakat due date comes. So what do you do? The answer is, if you, like most loans, we think we're going to get the money back. So if you think you'll get the money back someday, then you go ahead and pay zakat. If you're feeling like pretty sure that maybe this person's not going to give you the money back, then you don't worry about it. You don't know when, yeah. So if you're feeling confident they'll bring it back someday, you pay zakat on it. And if you feel like they're not going to pay it back, then you don't pay zakat on it. How do you handle a non-Islamic loan? Like, for example? Like a mortgage, like a conventional mortgage. So the question is, how do you handle a mortgage? Well, that mortgage has become part of your house. So you would handle it fundamentally the same way as you would, like I mentioned, the Islamic mortgage. You subtract the... Exactly. If you have $5,000 due coming up in the next month, you subtract that. That portion has some interest, which is not halal, but you still owe it, so you can subtract it. Yeah. 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 Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, a woman has 30 sets of jewelry and she wears each one just once a year. So barely, like she's barely wearing that jewelry. It's the same ruling as if a man has 20 Rolexes or if he has, 10 cars. At the end of the day, you know what you bought that jewelry or the car or the Rolex for. So, there's people who have 25 cars and they maybe they drive them once a year, once 2 years or whatever it is, but they know that they buy it because they like driving. I wake up in the morning, I want to drive a Bentley today, and tomorrow I want to drive my Ferrari. It's something that you're using. Now, Allah may question you in different ways, right? So Allah may question you because Allah says, do not do israf, wala tusrifu, right? And then Allah says, innahu la yuhibbul musrifin. Like Allah doesn't like those people who go beyond the bounds. They spend too much, right? Another place, Allah talks about tabdhir. And so Allah says, innal mubazzirina kanu ikhwana ash-shayatin. He says that the people who spend money on things you shouldn't be spending money on, they're just kind of like wasting stuff. Those people are like the brothers of shaitan. So Allah may hold you accountable in other ways. Maybe. I'm not trying to say having 10 cars is a problem. It depends on your social status. It depends on your intention. Like there's so much into it. One of the richest people in Islam that we know of, Elon Musk has a worth right now of, they calculated $450 billion, right? 450 billion. That's a lot of money. They did the math for Abdurrahman bin Auf. Who's Abdurrahman bin Auf? Anyone remember? Sahabi. He was one of the 10 guaranteed Jannah. One of the 10 people guaranteed Jannah. Inflation adjusted, they say his worth, somebody has a calculator online, they counted the dinars and the dirhams and all this stuff, and they said his worth at that time, inflation adjusted, was $800 billion. So he was richer than Elon Musk is now. And he was guaranteed paradise, right? The richest man in the world at the time maybe was guaranteed paradise. So it doesn't boil down to how much money we have or what's in the bank account or how many Ferraris we have. What it boils down to is, are we attached to that wealth? Do we have tawakkul in Allah? Are we giving our zakat? Are we giving beyond that, right? Is our heart and mind connected to the akhirah or the dunya? So you can have 30 sets of jewelry, it's not a problem. If you know that you're buying it because you just like jewelry and you like to wear jewelry, from a zakat perspective, you don't pay zakat on that, okay? And if you know that there's like 3 pieces of jewelry, like, this is going to go up in value, then you would pay zakat on that, right? That's what it boils down to. A couple more questions or no?
I think one time for one more question. Anybody has any more questions?
Like
yeah,
a
brother.
really good question.
Yeah.
This one is a little bit off. It's about the life insurance and this.
Ya Allah. Big question. The question is life insurance? That's the whole question? Subhanallah. Okay, so life insurance is a very complicated matter. Let me start with the default and say insurance as a default in Islam is impermissible. Because what you're doing as a default, Impermissible, not permissible. Not allowed as a default, not allowed. No insurance. Insurance as a default is not allowed because the fundamental principle that we have in Islam is that when you derive benefit from something, you take benefit, you need to take the risk associated with that. So you need to take the benefit. You can take the profit, but then you must also take the loss. And so this is why riba is haram, by the way. Because in riba, what happens is I loan someone money with interest. I loan someone money with interest. Whether they make money or lose money, I don't care. I just want my interest back, right? So it's unfair. I don't care if they win or lose. I always want to win. So my risk and my reward are not aligned. I want reward no matter what. Insurance is haram for the same reason, is that you're trying to transfer risk to somebody else in exchange for money. So as a default, insurance would not be allowed. Now, there's a few cases where insurance can be allowed. Number one, if it's law of the land. So car insurance, we have to get because it's the law of the land. Health insurance provided by the employer, no problem, provided by the government. Even, life insurance provided by the employer. Scholars don't have an issue with that because they're giving that to you as compensation for your work. You're not paying a premium, they're just giving that to you for free. The question becomes, what if you go out and buy life insurance? That's the tricky one. Again, by default, not allowed, but based on need. The Fiqh Council is actually working on a fatwa that's going to be released in the next few weeks, inshallah. Based on certain types of need, with certain conditions for certain people, certain type of life insurance could be allowed based on need. Not just for everybody, based on need. So how does that work? They say insurance could be a need, it could be a necessity for many people, and that a necessity at a wide scale can become a need. And so there will be some conditions. This fatwa is going to come out, and you can read that fatwa. It will talk about details of, even though certain things are haram, they can be halal in certain situations. So the fatwa will talk about in what situations can you get life insurance. But as a default, no. It will talk about the different types and all of that in there, inshallah. Yeah. What is a fatwa? Or what is the... It will be released, if you look at fiqhcouncil.org, it will be released in a few weeks. Right now, we're still working on the details, so I can't answer the question because we're working through it as a committee. Yeah, but default no, and then some conditions. Yeah. Just go to fiqhcouncil.org and check over there. Fiqh Council, F-I-Q-H Council.org. Yeah, inshallah.
So Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Umer. Inshallah, we'll have you back multiple times after Ramadan for more programs, inshallah. His contact information was up on there. Also, the program was recorded. It'll be on our YouTube channel, so if you want to rewatch or revisit any of the topics, it'll all be on there, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. O Allah, enable us to act on the knowledge that we learned. O Allah, allow us to benefit from this knowledge, to apply this knowledge, to not ignore any of the 5 pillars of Islam and all of the essentials of the deen, the foundations, the things that are the most important. Allow us to focus on those things that are most important: sabr and shukr and tawakkul and taqwa and salah and zakah and siyam and hajj. Allow us to focus on those things that matter, like taking care of our parents, taking care of our children, taking care of the needy, being good to others, being good to our neighbors, being good to those that need that, and allow us to understand the differences that we have on the minor things that are lesser important. Those things where there can be differences. Allow us to pay our zakat on time, in the right amount. Allow us to find it easy to pay the zakat. Allow us to spend in your way and to benefit from that in the akhirah. O Allah, make us successful in this dunya and the akhirah. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ أَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ